Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, today I got a fun and exciting episode for you guys today and a bit of good emulation news. That is because of a few days ago, as of the recording of this audio, Teknoparrot now runs Offroad Thunder. And if you're not familiar with this game, it's basically the sister game to Hydro Thunder, and it is absolutely a ton of fun, except it's not on water. And even though this came out on some of the Midway Treasures collections on modern consoles, it wasn't a very good port whatsoever, and the arcade original's always been the best way to play. But unfortunately, it's never really emulated before, because this is running on the Quicksilver 2 arcade PCB, which is basically just like a Windows 98 PC in a box with some 3DFX hardware strapped to it. So trying to get this thing to actually run can be a metric pain in the ass, because not only is it PC based, but basically Midway did a lot of things so that you can't just get the executable to run on anything. But the Teknoparrot team, including Coffee, went in and made sure that this now works and you can emulate it. It is still kind of day zero stuff though. The audio can have a glitch here and there, that is still being worked on, but considering Midway made some of the best arcade racing games of all time, and something like Offroad Thunder kind of goes along with Hydro Thunder, one of the other best games of all time, it's so great to have this actually running on PC. And it is extremely easy to set up, like basically anything Teknoparrot. You just give the game its files, you select the executable, and you go ahead and configure your controls, and you're into the game. Although pro tip, definitely configure a control for the volume level button up and down, because by default when this game launches on real hardware or on Teknoparrot, it's going to be basically muted, and you do need to adjust that volume up. But again, you can every once in a while get a little bit of a glitch in the audio where the music will just basically drop out, and right now there's not really any engine sounds whatsoever. But as far as the performance on something like Offroad Thunder on Teknoparrot is concerned, I played every single race in the game. I basically got to be able to finish every single course, and it didn't crash on me or have any issues whatsoever outside of that little bit of audio glitching here and there. And obviously the frame rate is basically exactly what it needs to be, because I'm running this on slightly faster hardware than the Celeron that would be on the Quicksilver board, along with that 3DFX chip. But honestly, it has that really good 3DFX look to it, kind of that Glide API vibe going on, and if you're not familiar with that from back in the day, it basically just had a very particular sense of style. Now as we move on to the next course here, the good thing about all of this as well, being in Teknoparrot, is the analog configuration on my wheel just feels dialed in completely. On some emulation platforms, sometimes you really have to kind of just play around with the analog for maybe 30-40 minutes until you get the wheel exactly where you want it to be, but here, just using my wheel or even an Xbox Series X controller, I felt like I was drifting, I was turning without having to turn too hard, or also the worst way, having to turn too softly, because sometimes in games you'll notice that the analog to digital converter, basically sending the signal into the emulation, will take like a quarter turn of the wheel and max you out basically right into the wall. So that's definitely not a problem you're going to have here whatsoever. But as far as preservation is concerned, it's absolutely great to have something like this available running on PC today. Not just from a preservation standpoint, to have the arcade original running and being able to be played for all time without the actual PCB, but also because the OG Xbox to PlayStation 2 and GameCube ports just really didn't perform that well. I did kind of look into the background, I played around with the GameCube version of the game, and it definitely had some latency in the controls that I just was not clicking with whatsoever. Where here, the original PC executable from that arcade board running a Teknoparrot, everything was just running exactly how I would expect as far as the input is concerned, and that is definitely important in a game, especially an arcade racing game. You want to feel like you have that direct connection between your wheel or controller and your pedals or the analog triggers and the cart in front of you. If that is not basically lined up, you're going to perform like shit, and it's just not going to be a fun time. And that is the nice thing about Teknoparrot and software emulation in general. You really can kind of dial those things in compared to something like a port to a console. You just can't really do that as well, because back in the day, so many arcade games reported to home console either in inferior versions or in ports that were kind of running on some sort of emulation and just didn't do as good of a job. So that is why it's great to have something like Offroad Thunder here. You leave me a comment down below and you tell me, did you play this one back in the day or not? I definitely threw some quarters in every time I saw it, but it definitely didn't reach the same heights of popularity as something like Hydro Thunder, because that game still is considered to be the best racing game of all time that takes place on water. And yes, I do know Sega has racing games on water as well. But here's a quote-unquote soundtrack sample, and I'll be right back. Now, I'm sure it was pretty obvious, but give me a comment down below and you tell me what was missing from that soundtrack sample, because there is one very big thing that isn't working right now, at least on my PC when I run Offroad Thunder. But I'm sure that will get fixed up in the future, because that's the nice thing about Teknoparrot, MAME, or any other software emulator. They are living pieces of software, and they will start to run games, and then they will improve over time. Because if you think about it this way, in like the last 4 weeks, we've got RPCS 3 in Teknoparrot running all of the PlayStation 3 games from Namco in the arcades, and now we have something like Offroad Thunder. They've been absolutely killing it when it comes to adding these insanely fun releases, and this one's probably my favorite of the year so far. Because if you know me and you know the channel, you know I love my arcade racing games, and this is one that I was thinking about actually trying to find a PCB for at some point in time. But right now my wife and I are trying to buy a house and move, so I've been trying not to buy too many things, not only because houses cost a metric fortune in Chicago, but also because anything I have delivered here just needs to be moved to a new house in the future. But now that this works so well in Teknoparrot, I'm going to take it off my list of arcade PCBs I would want to buy, because I really only collect and buy things that you can't experience any other way outside of real hardware. And as the years go on, so many of my boards just end up becoming redundant because they finally do emulate. And something like Offroad Thunder here, if you have a PCB, you're probably pretty close to the point in time where if you don't want to keep that thing around, you want to kind of recoup your money by selling it, you could just move over to Teknoparrot, and that is a big deal. In the last couple of years or so, so many games that didn't used to emulate whatsoever, that were basically locked to the real hardware, are now almost completely playable, whether it's something like Offroad Thunder in Teknoparrot, whether it's stuff like the Hyper Neo Geo 64 in MAME. So much of my collection now I don't actually have to take out of the closet anymore when I want to play it, because emulation has caught up and made it possible. And that is why I always love talking about these emulation updates on the channel. It isn't just because I love the games, it's that I love what they actually bring to us, because I understand I'm a little bit weird when it comes to arcade PCB collecting. I absolutely love that big bespoke hardware, but I readily admit that it takes up a massive amount of space in my office and studio, and I have a closet filled to the brim with arcade boards. So if it's one of those things, if I can just sit down at Teknoparrot and upload Offroad Thunder and go ahead and enjoy it that way, it is going to save me time in both the setup and definitely save me space and money. But you leave me a comment down below again and tell me which of the Thunder games was your favorite. We have Arctic Thunder, we have Offroad Thunder, and we have Hydro Thunder. And I'm sure Hydro Thunder could probably be in its own category because it is racing in boats, but that one definitely still is my favorite. But Offroad Thunder is no slouch either. I love the nitrous here that Midway put in all the games, kind of managing that. And trust me, this game is difficult as well. If you get a first place finish, it's because you raced well, not because the game was trying to give you one. Your opponents are ruthless. They're definitely going to bump and run you and even try to flip you here and there when they can. And I do love the very drifty nature of being in the dirt as well. All these textures kind of have a little bit different handling properties, so you really have to read the situation. But we're going to soundtrack sample 2 times, 35 seconds, and I'll be right back.
Extra time!
Fun soundtrack, fun announcer. If you haven't noticed yet, there really isn't any engine noise coming across, but the Teknoparrot devs are aware of this, and there might already be a fix in by the time you watch this video, just depending on when I schedule it. Because so many things happen news-wise in emulation and other fun releases, I make these things in batches and kind of have to decide when I schedule them, and I kind of have to decide for myself which one do I think is more important to go first, and which one can hold for a few days. And trust me, it's basically a coin flip as to whether or not I'm right. Half the time I nail it, the other half of the time I realize I did the exact opposite thing that I should have. But honestly, Offroad Thunder working in Teknoparrot is one of my favorite things in 2025, because I love the game, I love arcade preservation, and damn it, I love a good arcade racing game, and that's exactly what something like Offroad Thunder delivers to us. And this game is definitely something that is becoming rare these days. I probably haven't seen it in an arcade for about a decade or so. I've definitely seen Hydro Thunder more than once, but there's something about Offroad Thunder probably just didn't do as well for Midway, so the cabinets didn't hang out on arcade floors as long. But if you want to grab this one, you got to update your Teknoparrot, and yes, it is currently Patreon, although I'm sure it'll come off shortly because they allow members to vote on what they want to see made free next. But it is here, you can go play it, and I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye bye.